Hello and welcome to Teen Tuesdays, and I want to welcome you to a brand new series, and I'm calling it Being on Fire for God, a series on being on fire for God. And I know this is a very interesting phrase and a very interesting term, to be on fire. You hear it all the time on conferences, sermons, things like that. It's like, you need to be on fire for God. But what does that mean, really? What does it entail? And how do you know? How do you know that you're on fire for God or I am on fire for God, or does it even matter at all? And it does. And I think sometimes people get confused or they lose really how impactful, how amazing, how important it is to be on fire, but what that really means. I hope I tackle this series well. I hope it's a blessing. But I'm going to read a little portion of something to you in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 37. This is Elijah challenging the people of God to either choose the idols and the wicked religion of Ahab, Jezebel, and these people, or the one true God. And he says, "Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and thou hast turned their heart back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." The fire of the Lord fell. I want you to understand something about this subject, and we'll do several parts. I don't know how many, okay? Not sure exactly, but I do know there's a direction I want to go in. And if I wanted to say anything, I want you to know that this phrase that you hear, being on fire for the Lord, does not mean emotion. That's a common mistake. That being on fire is, man, every day you wake up and, man, you just kick the door down and you just run outside screaming, going, "Woo, I love the Lord. Let's do this." That's not what it means. In fact, being on fire for the Lord means the exact opposite. It means determination. It means faithfulness. Being on fire means you're making a choice. To be on fire is to be alive and awake and continually active, yes, but be active in what exactly? Paul reprimanded a certain group of people because they had zeal. Zeal is good, but it's not good when, like Paul said, they have zeal but not according to knowledge. What are you excited for? What do you want to be on fire for? Man, I want to be on fire for God. Okay, well, what does that mean? What are you on fire about? And if it means being emotional or being active, what are you being active in? And what does it mean to be on fire and how to stay that way? How to stay on fire? Because I'm going to tell you right now, in the Christian life, in the human life, really, you're not always going to feel like you're on fire, okay? You're not always going to feel like, man, I just want to go and reach the world with the gospel. There's going to be days where your flesh is weary, your mind is worried, and all in all, you don't feel on fire exactly. But again, it's not emotion, is it? It's the decisions that you make that determine this reality. But if I want to impress on something on you today, the very foundation of what it means to be on fire for God, that means having a passion. That means every day you live for Him and you walk in His strength and in His power and you're used of Him. The very first thing you have to understand, and nothing else will matter. I could close this series on this lesson alone, because if you don't get this, and if I don't get this, then it doesn't matter, okay? But the most foundational thing about being on fire for God is prayer. And you've heard about prayer a lot. Some of you went to youth conference, you heard about prayer. I preached on prayer a few weeks ago on Hannah. I did an actual series on prayer on this very, on broadcast. So we talk about prayer a lot, right? Like, okay, I get it, prayer. But you have to understand that to be on fire for God, there is no other way if you do not have a prayer life. It is not something that's in addition to what you're doing. It's not something that you add to your repertoire of Christian acts If you do not have an active prayer life, you can never, and now listen, you can never be on fire for God. It just can't happen. Because you have to understand that nothing happens without first being in prayer. You have to understand, like, every time there was a great moment of deliverance for the people of Israel, there was prayer. When someone asks God for forgiveness, there is prayer. When Jesus would commit miracles, when he fed all of those people, remember, loaves and fishes, what did he first do? He prayed. Every great awakening that happened in our country's history, in the history of England, first happened in a small prayer meeting. And your very own salvation doesn't happen without prayer, without speaking to God. You cannot receive salvation. Think of that. The very foundation of your salvation is based on prayer. So just as the foundation is, you can't live a life on fire for God without a life of prayer. There is no energy. There is no strength. There is no power. And see, the problem is many times we run on emotion. We run on feelings because that's really by and large how our society is. That's how we act. That's what we think is important, how we feel. Entire marriages are based on feelings, not on a decision to love the other person, a sacrificial love. Getting a job, choosing a spouse, going on, a lot of things we do is based on emotion and feeling. But there's something way more important than that. It's a choice. It's a choice to determine that everything you are and everything that you want to be first has to come from someone. And it comes from God and God alone, not based on how you feel. You know, there's an old saying that we say about the Mountaintop Experience. If you go to youth conference or camp or you have some amazing experience, we like to call that a mountaintop experience. And that comes from when Jesus took his core group, Peter, James, and John, up to a mountain. You remember? It's called the Mount of Transfiguration. Up there, man, heaven opened up. They saw Elijah, who we just read about. We saw Moses and Jesus talking with them. That's amazing. That's incredible. And Peter said, and I don't blame him, hey, let's build a tent here. Let's build a house here. Man, let's stay up here forever. Let's stay up on this mountain. And I'm sure many of you think that when you have a great week at camp or youth conference, whatever, say, man, let's just stay here forever. We're all together. We're loving the Lord. We're singing together. It's just all our problems seem to melt away. Can't we just stay on this mountain forever? But you can't, because you have to come down that mountain. Because there's people down that mountain that need you, that need the Lord, and they need the Lord to shine through your life. That's called coming down the mountain, the mountaintop experience. But the problem is, I remember when I would finish camp many times, man, I was on fire, right? I was on fire for God. Let's go reach the town of Jupiter. Let's reach Florida. Let's reach the country, the world for Jesus Christ. But see, I was fueled by the raw energy and the excitement and the emotion that went along with it. But what took me years to understand, and I'm still learning today, is that the way you stay on fire, the way that flame still breathes within you, is not some weekly retreat. It's by living a life walking with God. You see, I went right back to my old habits, right back to my own pitfalls, right back to some of the same sins that I swore I would just surrender off to God after that week of camp. But you know why? Was it because God was wrong? Was it because camp was wrong or that week was a waste of time? No, absolutely not. The reason why is because I didn't keep the fire burning. Because it was only burning on my emotions. And that's like a little Roman candle. It's like, boom, it's going to go out. The way the fire keeps burning, it's burning by a relationship with God through prayer. My prayer life instantly faltered. And if you don't pray to God, the fire will not fall from heaven. You know, Elijah did this great thing that we read, right? Incredible, incredible miracle. But guess what? It all started with a prayer. He said, "Hear me, O Lord." How is your prayer life? Because it doesn't really matter how great a week is, or a month, or a year. If you don't have an active prayer life, you can never truly be on fire for God, because that fire that you desire, that passion, that energy to live every day for God, it doesn't come from you or from me. It doesn't exist in our flesh. Our flesh wants to be like put out. Hide it under a bushel, yes. I don't want to let it shine. That's our flesh. That's what we live with every day when we wake up. But through prayer, God sends His strength. God sends His wisdom. God sends His fire so that you can live a life filled with excitement and strength. But it's His strength and not yours. It doesn't mean every day you're going to just be filled with energy and let's do this, right? It's not going to happen. There's days of heartbreak. There are days of sorrow. There's days of confusion and disappointment. Jesus Christ was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, but He never took His eyes off of what truly mattered, which was doing the will of Him that sent Him, by doing the will of His Father. Jesus Christ certainly was on fire for God, but there was times He wept. There was times He was hungry. Those times He was exhausted. But He was always on fire because it wasn't based on emotion. It was based on Jesus Christ dwelling and living and walking with His Father. And all the time in the Scriptures, seeing Jesus Christ pray. How is your prayer life? I don't have to do the rest of this series if I do not learn this and you do not learn this. That we cannot be on fire for God. And the things that we experience during a great week or month or a sermon that your pastor preaches or whatever, those things cannot continue, and they will not continue unless you live a life of prayer. When you pray, you admit that God is and that He is a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. It's a choice. It's a decision. It's not emotion. And it all starts with prayer. But oh man, if you pray to God and you have an active prayer life, there's nothing that God cannot do through you and for you, by the way. And yes, you will truly be on fire for God because you can't help but be. When you are around God, when you are surrounded with Him in prayer, the power, the strength, the comfort that you get from all of that fellowship is beyond compare. And again, it doesn't mean your life's going to be perfect. I mean, Daniel prayed in a lion's den, okay? It's great that he's praying, but he's still in a lion's den, right? Doesn't mean your life will be perfect. But you'll be on fire for God because you cannot dwell with God. You cannot have fellowship with God and not begin to be like God and not begin to have His priorities and His heart for others. How is your prayer life? Just ask yourself that question. What other great thing that you've ever experienced in your life, that is just a taste of how amazing it's going to be in heaven. But the way we can harness that now is by continually going to God in prayer. And that's the first part. And there'll be many parts to this. I hope that this is an encouragement and a blessing to you. I'm excited. I am excited to do this series with you. But until then, always praying for you and encourage you to keep on your prayer life. Don't let it snuff out. Keep that fire burning. And we'll see you next time. Thank you and God bless. Bye-bye.